Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So the way we'll go this morning is this. I'll do a little ritual worship as we do at Arati, but not with all of the Arati aspects, but just a little worship of the Mother. Then I will talk about her for a while, and we will have a chance to interact as we always do during that. Many of you have been with us as we have studied the Mother's life over the last couple of years, reading Swami Chaitanananda's book. And then we'll do a little food offering for the Mother, and then just a little arati at the end also, just very short. So with that, we will begin. Om Hari Om. Jai Shri Rama Krishna. 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 Jai Shri Ram 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 Krishna. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Shri Ma Mahamai Ki Jai. Jai Swamiji Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Raja Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan Ki Jai. Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Some of you may wonder why, when we're worshiping Mother, we chant Jai Shri Ramakrishna. And that is because that is the way she wanted it. She said that she and the Master were one being, and that our worship should go to that one being, but in the name of Sri Ramakrishna. So that's why we didn't chant Jai Shri Sharda Devi, although that was implied in what was done. As you can see, her picture is in front, and this will be the object of our worship this morning. Now, to talk about the Mother is almost impossible because the Mother is so much. I mean, this is the universal being made manifest to us in the form of Sri Sharda Devi. She was born about this time of the year in 1853 in the little village of Jairambati, which is in West Bengal, not too far from the birthplace of Sri Ramakrishna, which is Kamarpukur. Now, her mother had a remarkable, Shamasundari is her mother's name, had a remarkable experience before the mother was born. She was going on a little pilgrimage to the village of Shihar when she felt she needed to go into the bushes. Well, she went into some bushes near a bell tree. And as she was there, a little girl climbed down from the bell tree, dressed in a red sari. The child was 5 or 6 years old, anklets, bracelets, jingling. The Shamasundari was just she didn't understand, but the little girl came up to her, wrapped her arms around Shamasundari's neck, and said, "I will be born to your family." At which point, Shamasundari lost outer consciousness. She was found by her family members and brought home still in a semi-conscious state. And when she awoke and came to herself, she knew she was pregnant. And so 9 months later, in 1853, early in 1853, Sri Sharda Devi was born. Now, life in Jairambati was a very simple life, and they were a poor Brahmin family. Ramachandra, her father, was a Brahmin priest, very honest, very upright. And so, because of his uprightness, he wouldn't accept gifts or money from just anyone. And so they had just enough, so to speak. Sri Sharda Devi grew up as an adventuresome little girl and quite loving toward the animals, particularly the cows of Jairambati. She would go into the pond and go, wade in up to her shoulders and pull the grasses, the vegetation that grew in the pond. She would pull it and take it to the cows. And things like that. She was very devoted to her family, very loving. And when she was just 5 years old, she was taken to a festivity in Kamarpukur. Among those who were present, was Sri Ramakrishna. He was still known as Gadadhar, or Gadai. And someone teasingly said to her, "Oh, who do you think you will marry?" Because there were lots of young men among the crowd. And she pointed directly at Sri Ramakrishna. "This is the story. I will marry him," she said. Well, that turned out to be the case. When she was just a child still, she was betrothed in the way that the marriages went in those days among Brahmin families. She was betrothed to Sri Ramakrishna, and they were married. But she did not see him much, except when he came to visit, which was rarely. She didn't see him until she went to Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna was living. And the reason she made that journey on foot of 60 miles was that she had heard and had been taunted by her neighbors in Jairambati about the fact that her husband was a madman. So she went to see for herself. An interesting incident happened on the way to her, on her walk to Dakshineshwar from Jairambati. She was frail. She was not a strong young woman. And so the companions that she was walking with, went on ahead of her. Night fell, and this dacoit couple, now dacoits are thugs. They rob and even kill people. This dacoit couple appeared out of the darkness, and instead of being afraid of them, Sri Sharda said, "Oh, Father, you have come to rescue me. Thank you." Well, somehow she just stole their hearts, this couple, and they did not rob her. They took her in, gave her food and drink, shelter for the night, and then they walked with her the rest of the way to Dakshineshwar. And of course, when she arrived at Dakshineshwar, she found that her husband was not a madman at all, that it was a divine madness that people misunderstood. And so she began to serve him and live with him. But they couldn't live in the same room together, not because there was anything wrong with it, but because what did frighten her was Sri Ramakrishna's samadhis. He would go into samadhi for seemingly no reason that she could discern, and he would appear to be dead. No breath, no sign of life, and she would be frightened that he was dead. So he moved her out of that room into a room where she lived then for a number of years, which was in a music tower very close to his room called the Nahabat, where there were more than one Nahabat there. This is the one closest to his room. And what he moved her into it was cleared out for her to live in it. It had been a storeroom. So it had a very low entryway, and the floor was of stone. So she lived there, and though it was a very difficult life, and sometimes other women would come and stay with her. So it would sometimes be very crowded. But she said that living there and serving the master, she said, filled her heart with a picture of bliss. The master regarded her and spoke of her as a manifestation of the Divine Mother in the form of Saraswati. Now, for those of you who know about Saraswati, this will be repetition, but for those of you who don't, Saraswati is a special manifestation of the Divine Feminine that has responsibility or has the grace of offering to humanity the sciences, the arts, which includes literature and poetry and music. All of these things are offered to humanity by Saraswati. And Sharada is just a form of the name Saraswati. Now, if you think about how the world has transformed, just think about the 100 years from 1853 to 1953. The sciences actually took shape during that time. There had been science before then, but it was primitive indeed. Arts and literature just burst forth. music. And it continues, of course, now in the second 100 years. If we imagine what things will be like in 2053. Mother lived from 1853 to 1920. So when she did indeed leave the body, that didn't mean she was gone from our presence. She, like the Master, Sri Ramakrishna, is present in their subtle body. It's very like, for those of you who were raised Christian, it's very like what Christ said when he said, "Whenever two or more of you are gathered together, I will come among you." In other words, in his subtle body, he would be with them. I will come among you and give you peace. So this is what Sri Ramakrishna said, that he would have to return in 2086, and the mother will come with him. Now, this brings to mind something that is said in the evening prayer, breaker of this world's chain. It's said of Sri Ramakrishna by Vivekananda, but of course it applies to them both. If we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. And of course, that is exactly why Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and their band of minstrels, as Sri Ramakrishna called them, their direct disciples, his direct disciples, came. Now, Sri Ramakrishna lived only 50 years, from 1836 to 1886, in a physical form. He did not have that many disciples. Swami Chaitananda estimates that there were something just shy of 100 direct disciples to whom he gave initiation and instruction. Of course, those included the young people that became part of the Ramakrishna order when it was founded, and then householders such as Girish Ghosh and Surendra and Ramachandra and so on. But the master said to the mother, I'm leaving the heavy lifting to you. I'm leaving the heavy work to you. This came up when she remarked they had been married for some years, and she said, oh, it's sad. The way we live, I won't have any children. And Sri Ramakrishna just chuckled and said, oh, yes, you will have children. You will have numberless children. You will have so many children you won't be able to count them all. Estimates have been made that Holy Mother gave initiation to something on the order of 2,000 people during her lifetime. She had many, many Indian disciples from all classes, from those dacoits that had rescued her on her way to Dakshineshwar that night, that couple, to the highest levels of society, became her disciples, and everything in between. Something on the order of 2,000 disciples. Plus, she gave instruction to many, many, many more. After Sri Ramakrishna left the body, he had told her to go to Kamarpukur and live with his relatives. She did that, but it was a time of great privation. They were not particularly well off either, and did not treat her particularly well. She lived on a little rice and some spinach plant, kind of spinach-like plant, and was not well clothed. And finally, this came to the attention of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And so they rescued her from this life. And she began to split her time between her home village of Jairambati. Her mother was still alive. And she would also spend time in Calcutta. In the beginning, she would live either in devotees' homes or in rented places. Finally, Swami Sharadananda, one of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, who just incidentally, there's no such thing as incidentally actually, but Sri Ramakrishna remarked of Sharadananda that he, along with another of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, Ramakrishnananda, had been direct disciples of Christ. In any event, Swami Sharadananda became General Secretary of the Ramakrishna Order when it was formally founded. And he found this unacceptable, the way the mother had to live when she came to Calcutta, that she had no privacy, that she had no home of her own. So he built her a home, the Udbodhan building. He had his office and the publishing offices of the Udbodhan magazine, one of the magazines of the Ramakrishna Order, on the ground floor, and then mother's residence above. She called this her cage in Calcutta. She loved the life of her home village, of Jairambati. But because of its inaccessibility in those days, there were no roads to the place. There was a track, a rutted track that would become muddy and almost impassable in the rainy season, dusty and difficult to walk even in the dry season. So it was difficult for the people of Calcutta to come and visit her in Jairambati in the beginning. So she stayed in Calcutta for their convenience, for them to be able to come to her and take initiation and receive instruction and so on, and receive her grace. They came to her, as we've read in Swami Chaitanananda's book about her, they came to her for every possible reason that you can imagine. And she encouraged this. And she continues to encourage it. She said, when you are in distress, remember you have a mother. And so we are to turn to her when we are in distress. She also said, as some of her last instructions, if you want peace of mind, my dears, do not find fault with others. Seek the faults in yourself. Do not find faults with and judge others. Find your own faults. But she said also, the whole world is your own, my dears. No one is a stranger. And certainly we feel that when we gather together as this congregation, this loving, sweet congregation that we are. So before I go on, are there any comments or questions from your own wisdom, anything you'd like to offer, your own knowledge of the mother, or any concern you'd like to raise or question you'd like to ask about what's been said, or about the mother in general, or about Sri Ramakrishna, or holy life, or sacred life in general? Anything at all from anyone? All right. Well, I'm glad you're pleased with the way things are going, and so let's just continue then with the mother's life. She would return to Jairambati during the year. She loved the life there, the simplicity. She didn't have to be veiled there in Calcutta. It was unseemly for a woman to be unveiled in the presence of strangers and, of course, men. In Jairambati, she was a known figure, and women didn't wear veils in that way there. So as time went on, transportation began to improve between that part of West Bengal and Calcutta. And a railway was built to as close as Vishnupur, which is not that far away. I mean, these days it's no distance at all, but it was still about 20 miles away. But that's the difference between 20 miles and 60 miles on foot or by bullock cart or palanquin. So people began to come to visit the mother. And of course, the villagers were very puzzled. And her brothers were very puzzled. They just had known her as sister or aunt or Sharda, one of the village women. Very few people recognized who she was in the village. But it began to amaze them that all of these people, some of them quite obviously wealthy and important, began to visit her in Jairambati and seek her initiation, seek her guidance, her counsel, and just her graceful love. And when they would come, she would feed them. She would cook and feed them with her own hands. She had some help, particularly as time went on. But still, right up till she just wasn't physically able to do it anymore, which was very near the end, really, she continued to cook and serve. And, of course, this was without exception when her disciples, who were from that dacoit class of people, almost without caste, you could say. They were beneath consideration. Well, she would feed them, and her own relatives and the villagers were shocked. And she said, no, these two are my children. These two are my children. And so she fed them with her own hands. And when some monks once came and she fed them, and afterwards they were going to clean up after themselves, she said, no, no, I'll take care of that. I'll clean up after you. Now, one of these monks was Swami Prabhavananda, my guru. He had come to see her. And he said, but mother, we can't allow you to do that. And she said to him, if your own mother were the one who served you, what would you do? Well, Swami Prabhavananda said, well, of course, we would expect her to clean up after us. And she said, well, I am your real mother. And she also said this to others, I am your real mother. I am your true mother. I am the mother of all. And so you can imagine how people would flock to this kind of love and offer her their adoration as we are doing today. In Calcutta, many people came to see her. There was a weekly visitation period for when anyone could come. And Swami Prabhavananda, at that time, not yet Swami Prabhavananda, but just a boy in college, he would also come. And he said, I had no spiritual aspirations or apparent spiritual leanings in those days. I was a college boy. And by the way, he was known among his college chums as the best dressed boy in all Calcutta. He was always very natty in his dress. But he said, I would go to Holy Mother not because of any spiritual or any apparent spiritual ideas I had. I was a revolutionary. I was helping people get guns and so on for the revolution against the British. But he would go to Holy Mother, he said, because when he touched her feet, he would get this lovely, what he called as like a mild electric shock. Well, now those of us who've been around a while in this life know that that said a world about him, that he could feel that and that it was attractive to him. Of course, there was that spiritual aspiration that soon awakened in Swami Prabhavananda and many others that visited Holy Mother there in Calcutta. Now, the Holy Mother saw it as beneficial that there should be a Ramakrishna order monastery close to her village. And it should be understood that everyone, including Swami Vivekananda, regarded Holy Mother as the real head of the Ramakrishna order. Every important decision of any kind was referred to her. And so when she expressed a desire to have a monastery close by so that the brahmacharis could be of use to her and serve the devotees. One was established in a place just a few miles down the road from Jairambati, on the way to and from Calcutta, a place called Koalpura. And so a monastery was established there, and a residence was established there for Mother also. And one of the remarkable things was that pictures had been taken of the Master and Holy Mother. And she installed those pictures herself in that Koalpura monastery. And what surprised even the monks was that she worshipped her own picture, as we are worshiping her picture today. She worshipped her own picture because it was the divine being worshipped by the human form. And so when she installed that picture in the Koalpura monastery, she worshipped not only the Master's picture, but her own picture. Now she carried with her a picture of the Master in a little tin box at all times. And this was worship. She did worship of that picture virtually every day. Only when she was really too ill to do anything at all was that worshipped. And even then, she would mentally worship. Sri Ramakrishna said of that picture, which is this shrine pose, he said, when he saw it, he said, oh, there will be a time when that picture is worshipped in millions of homes all over the world. And of course, that has come to pass. So Mother continued splitting her time between Jairambati and Calcutta from about 1909 to the end of her life in 1920. One time when she was in Jairambati, a familiar figure to some of you came to visit her. His name was Girish Ghosh. He was one of the really remarkable stories associated with the Master, one of the Master's direct disciples. And this was a man, he was known as the father of modern, he is known as the father of the modern theater and drama in Bengal. He owned a theater called the Star Theater, and so on, where Sri Ramakrishna visited. At one time, this man, who had been such a drunk and such a dissipated personality, still able to write. The story goes he would be writing 5 plays at a time, at the same time drinking more wine than most people would be able to consume and stay upright. He would be dictating 5 plays to secretaries in the room with him. This man, after he had become sober and saintly, actually, came to visit Holy Mother in Jairambati. Now, he had never seen her without her veil. When he came, he exclaimed, "Oh, can it be you? Is it you?" And she said, "What do you mean, my child?" He said, "It's you. It's the same goddess that came to visit me and heal me when I was just a young man and on my deathbed. You came and sat on my bed, put your hand on my forehead, and I was healed. And she just laughed. And he said, who are you? Who are you? And she said, I am your real mother. I am your true mother. Not just the wife of your guru, not a stepmother, not a false mother. I am your true mother. And as we've studied this book of Swami Chaitanananda's on the life of Holy Mother, the title of that book is Sri Sharada Devi, Her Divine Play, if you want to secure a copy. As we've studied the life of Holy Mother, we see that this is her attitude toward us all. She is our true mother, our real mother. And so that's how we regard her as we offer her worship on her birthday today. So before I go ahead and do that little final worship and offer her some food and invite her to take food and so on, is there anything from anyone that you'd like to say? Any wisdom to offer, any experience that you've had of the mother or of anything associated with the mother? Any concern you'd like to raise? Any question you'd like to ask? All right. Holy Mother lived, according to Swami Vivekananda, here at this center, this spiritual center in the body, the fifth center. It gave her words extraordinary power, of course, but it also was an extraordinary place from which to live because she was always in a kind of samadhi. And the temptation for her was to ascend to the higher and leave the body entirely. It was a temptation. She admitted it. She said it in so many words. And so Sri Ramakrishna provided what he called her Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya means the Maya, that aspect of manifestation that brings a kind of union. The Yoga Maya was in the form of her niece, Radhu. Radhu was born to her mother, who was herself mentally unstable, the mother. And so when the mother saw that that Radhu's mother was not able to care for her, she took responsibility for her. Sri Sharada Devi took responsibility for Radhu. And it was Radhu that kept her fastened, so to speak, to the material, phenomenal world until 1920. She cared for Radu, she loved Radu, she did everything she could to make Radu's life wonderful as she would do for any child, as we would do for our own child. But then at the end of her life, in 1920, in her final illness, she sent Radu away and said, that Leela, that play of my life is over. And then she was able to leave the body. Those of us who take refuge with the mother as our mother, Sri Ramakrishna encouraged us, and Holy Mother encouraged us to think of her willingness to care for us and do for us in the way that she did for Radu. And if you study the life of Mother, you'll see that many, many came to her and received many graces. Some of them would be classified as miracles, healings, knots of the heart dissolved, spiritual barriers overcome. All of these things the mother did. But of course, she would always say, I'm taking this to the Master, Sri Ramakrishna. And he's the one doing it. Well, we need to keep in mind that they're not two beings. They're one being in two forms for purposes of manifesting what is needful for us. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. And so now we will offer our love in the form of some food to Holy Mother. We have some lovely food here, some chana masala, which would of course been a familiar dish to Mother, and then some things that are more Western. Of course, we also have some yogurt for her and some fruit salad made with yogurt and some sweets. So I will offer those to the Mother, and as she's taking the food, I'm going to sing a song. It's also St. Stephen's Day today. Lori, I think you'll find on the table there's the lyrics to Good King Wenceslas. Thank you. So while she's taking the food, I'm going to sing Good King Wenceslas and say a few words about it. It's a parable that Mother would have recognized and understood intensely. So first I'll offer the food, and then I'll sing while she eats. Mother, please receive this food with our love. Please take it and consume it as you wish. Oh, dearly beloved Mother, we offer this food with all of our heart's devotion. Please take, eat, be satisfied, and be filled with the knowledge of our love and devotion. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Now, as I said, in Christian, in the 12 days of Christmas, this is St. Stephen's Day, December 26th. And this is a song written to offer us a parable of a king who was a saint and what happened as a result of his sainthood. It's called Good King Wenceslas. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel, when a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hither, page, and stand by me, if thou know'st it telling, yonder peasant, who is he, where and what his dwelling? Sire, he lives a good league hence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes fountain. Bring me meat and bring me wine, bring me pine logs hither, thou and I shall see him dine, when we take them thither. Page and monarch, forth they went together, through the rude wind's wild lament, and the winter weather. Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, my good page, tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less coldly. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dinted. Heat was in the very sod, where the saint had print, which the saint had. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dinted. Heat was in the very sod, which the saint had printed. Therefore, noble folk, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, you who now will bless the poor, shall yourselves find blessing. The parable of good King Wenceslas, a saint. As we know, saints gain the powers of the great incarnation that they follow. In this case, Wenceslas he followed the incarnation of Christ. And so he was able to manifest the control over the five elements. And heat was in the very sod which the saint had printed. But the more important part of the story is what happened when he saw this king. Now, in those kind of kingdoms, there was a rule that you could not gather wood, even fallen wood, within the forest fence. That wood was for the use of the monarch, of the king. And so when this story starts, good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen when a poor man came in sight looking for winter fuel. Well, now, he was breaking the rule. So when Wenceslas asks the page, who is this guy? Where does he live? You'll notice the page answers rather cautiously. He doesn't say his name, though he probably knows it. He says, "Oh, sire, he lives a good league hence." Now, a league is 3 or 4 miles. 3 to 4 miles. "Sire, he lives a good league hence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes Fountain." Now, St. Agnes Fountain is again an interesting part of the story. It was either Wenceslas' sister or his aunt. It's unclear in the legend. But they had taken a spring, a natural spring that either the aunt or the sister had taken that spring and turned it into a place where people could get pure water coming from the spring in the form of a fountain. This was not an uncommon thing for kings and noble people to do in those settings. But apparently his sister or his aunt was also a saint, Saint Agnes. So this man lived a good ways away. So the fact that he was that close to the castle, seeking winter fuel on a cold winter's night, indicates that he was kind of desperate. And that's how the king responded to it. He could have called his guards, said, "Arrest that man," called one of the prelates, or held a trial and hung him. Could have done it. Which is why the page was so cautious in his reply. That wasn't King Wenceslas' response. "Bring me meat and bring me wine. Bring me pine logs hither." In other words, he was going to take him some proper firewood. "Bring me pine logs hither. Thou and I shall see him dine." Now, it's also interesting that he refers to the page as thou. Thou is the formal and respectful way of speaking to someone in those days. Still now, for that matter. So he recognized the divinity within everyone. The peasant who was going to have his grace of food and drink and firewood, and his page, thou and I shall see him dine when we bear them thither. And then they go to take the food and drink and firewood. And the page, he says, I'm freezing to death. I can't go on. And Wenceslas says, mark my footsteps, my good page. Tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less cold. So he was able to transfer that warmth and life-giving. Now, what is this a metaphor for? When we follow in the footsteps of these saints and those whose sainthood they represent, the incarnations, we will be sustained in the cold winter of this world. Mark my footsteps, my good page. Tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less cold. In other words, you will be strengthened and warmed in your heart if you follow in the footsteps of, follow the instructions of these great ones. And it ends, therefore, noble folk, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, those of you who bless the poor shall yourselves find blessing. We don't have to look very far in the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma to find that kind of instruction. So before I do the final little arati worship of the mother, is there anything that anyone would like to offer or say?
I would. I
Yes.
would just like to add that I love that part about, following my footsteps, and the wind, the cold weather will freeze your blood less. And it reminded me of a story I was told by a close family friend. And we never know what form the divine is going to take.
Mm-hmm.
Also, my friend was traveling for her job in the Northeast, and it was just horrific snowstorms. And it was at night, and she was out on some highway somewhere, and she couldn't see anything in front of her, and she was just in her little rental car. And a big semi comes along and sees that she's struggling, and he pulls over and he says, just stay right behind me, because the big trucks will make that path. And she went, I don't know what it was, 50 miles or so. It was a long way in this guy's wake right behind him. And he was going slowly. And she said, he saved my life, basically. But so, yeah, that night, that trucker was the divine come to say, you just follow right behind me and I'll protect you.
Thank you for bringing that one,
Yeah.
Cindy. That's perfect. Exactly. We don't know. So anything else from anyone? All right. Well, we'll just finish with this little, and I'm not going to chant anything. I'm just going to offer the light and offer the incense, and then I'll do our closing chant.
Chakra. Oh, sorry. I didn't. Is it lit still?
No, it's not. Allow this.
Should I get? Shall I empty the wax from there into the so you can light it?
We'll just empty it right here.
Okay.
Thanks for noticing. When you get as blind as I'm getting, you can miss such things. Third time is the charm. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Shri Ma Mahamai Ki Jai. Jai Swamiji Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Raja Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan Ki Jai. Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. Jai Shri Sharada Devi. Jai Shri Sharada Devi. Jai Shri Sharada. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite, universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. Let us go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Happy birthday, Mother. Happy birthday, Jesus Christ. With great love and respect for all of you. Until midnight on the 31st, or a few minutes before midnight. This will be the last opportunity for us to gather like this together. We'll have a midnight meditation on December 31st, January 1st. And then on the 1st, of course, there will be the Kalpataru Day. But until then, any final words from anyone? Anything that you would like to say?
Oh, Shankar?
Yes.
Do you want to mention about the food bank and the clothing?
Oh, yes. Thank you. If those of you who receive the newsletter are seeing this each week, Holy Mother's Helping Hands is our year-end initiative to provide food through the Atlanta Community Food Bank and provide warm clothing for the rest of the winter. We've gathered a great deal of clothing, by the way. It's wonderful. We have a goal of $1,900 for to give to the food bank. You'll find a link in the newsletter or on the website that will take you directly to that fund. So if you wish to contribute, just to let you know, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, they don't provide the food directly. They provide that food to food pantries and to places that distribute, like Meals on Wheels and so on, to old people and to children. And for every dollar that you contribute, just let's get this clear in our minds. For every dollar that we contribute, they provide 4 meals. That's how efficient they are. They gather food. Food is donated from all kinds of places. Trader Joe's gives them a lot of food. The various supermarket chains give them food. And they package it up and get it to these food pantries and kitchens that provide meals to homeless and indigent people. And then, of course, the clothes closet at this Christian church nearby. They have a huge and really well-maintained clothes closet where the homeless and the less fortunate among us can come and get good, warm winter clothing. So if you want to offer some clothing, just bring it here. Let me know you're coming, and we'll put it in the chapel. And in the last week of this year, we'll take it over to the clothing over to the church. And at the end of the year, we'll give a check for whatever has been donated to the Atlanta Community Food Bank. So thank you, Lori, very much for reminding me about that. Holy Mother's Helping Hands. This is what our program is called, Holy Mother's Helping Hands. And if you see in both the shrine pose and in the picture that we have in the chapel, when you just come in the door, the front door of the chapel, you see this picture of Mother with her hands. Obviously, they are her helping hands. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears.
Thank you for wonderful.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. This is Nandini. I
Yes.
would like to express my heartfelt thanks for the beautiful rendition in the morning. As you know, we felt sick and we are just recovering by the grace of Thakur Ma. And it was so wonderful to listen sitting here. It was like a home away from home, tucked in one corner. And you made us, I'm really overwhelmed. And I really wish you from the bottom of my heart a healthy and a peaceful life ahead, brother.
Thank you, dear. From your lips to Mother's ear. Anyone else? Anything? Thank you, Nandini. And good health to you. May you recover your health quickly.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, brother.
All right, dears. Well, we will sign off. And it's a good idea to remember this parable of good King Wenceslas, for us to behave accordingly.
Thank you, brother. Wonderful service.
I'm glad. So until next time, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.